Today we're talking about cube factoring. So if you notice right here, A is a cube and B is a cube. So you can, when you have two cubes, whether it is a sum, meaning adding, or a difference, meaning subtraction, both of them can be factored. Where previously when we were doing squares, it has to be a difference of squares in order to factor. A sum of squares is not factorable, but in cube factoring, both sums and differences are factorable. If you look back on the grades wall, there is an orange poster that says cube factoring, and it has both of the sum of cubes and also the difference of cubes. And then right behind it, you'll notice that there is a list of the first 10 cubes. That might be something that you would want to write down so that you have it for reference. And at some point, hopefully you should have at least numbers 1 through 10 cubed memorized. So I want to talk real quick about how you factor these. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that both terms, your A and your B term, are both written as cubes. And if you notice, they are. Once they are written as cubes, you're going to have two parentheses. You have a small parenthesis and a larger parenthesis. Your first parenthesis is written exactly the same way as it's written with the cubes, but it doesn't have the cubes. So if you notice, these are just both written as A plus B without the cubes. Okay, so that's my first parenthesis. Your second parenthesis is your first term here is this first term squared. Okay, so you take the first term and the first term here is this one squared, so you get A squared. This last term right here is again the last term squared, and that goes at the end. Your middle term here is these two multiplied together and the opposite. So if you multiply A times B together, it's AB, but since it's a positive, this is going to be a negative. Okay? So this will work the same thing. It'll work the same way when you have the difference of cubes. So again, your first parenthesis, you write it exactly the same way as it was with the cubes. So you have A minus B. Your first term in the next parenthesis is the first term squared. Your last term is the last term squared. And again, if you think about this, the last term is negative B. Well, anytime you square a negative, it becomes a positive. So that's a positive B squared. And then when you multiply A times B together, you get AB, but since this is a minus, it's the opposite of that, which is a plus. And so this will work all the time when you have cubes. If you notice, how many negatives are, once it's factored, how many negatives are here? Okay, there's 1. On this one, how many negatives are here? There is 1. Good. So that means that when you are factoring cubes, no matter what, there will always be 1 negative. Only 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. And one key thing, we always check for GCF first. No matter what, whenever we're factoring, always check for GCF first. So, example 1. Here, always check for GCF. There isn't one, so that's your first thing. Second thing is you check to make sure they are squares or cubes or whatever. In this case, we're dealing with cubes, so these hopefully will be written as cubes. So X is already written as a cube. And then 8, you have to write 8 as a cube. So what, and if you need to, look back at the charts that we have on the wall, but what number is cubed to make an 8? And that is 2. 2 cubed is the same thing as 8. So we make our two parentheses. We have a small one and a larger one, because this has 2 terms, this one will have 3. Once these are written as cubes, you take away the cubes, and that's what goes in your first parenthesis. So X minus 2 goes in my first parenthesis. Not X minus 8, because if you just wrote the 8, you did it wrong, because 8 isn't written as a cube. You have to change 8 so that it's written as a cube. then your first term here is the first term squared. So this first term is going to be x squared. Your last term is the last term squared, and 2 squared is 4. Your middle term is these multiplied together. X times 2 is 2x. This one will always be positive because a negative squared will be a positive, and since this is negative, this will be plus. So this is your answer. Okay. Moving on, number 2. Okay, is everything, first of all, is there a GCF? No. Next thing is everything written as cubes? Yes, so I don't even have to rewrite anything. Everything is written as cubes. So now we make our 2 parentheses. My first parenthesis is written exactly the same way as it is here. We just take away the cubes. So that means it's going to be AB plus C. My first term here is this first term squared. Now be careful because you have to square the A and the B. So we have A squared, B squared. Your last term is the last term squared, and that is C squared. Remember that this will always be positive because even if it was a negative squared is a positive. Your middle term is these multiplied together. So when you multiply AB times C, you get ABC. And since this is positive, this is going to be a negative. How many negatives should there be in my factored form? 1. 1 is correct, and that is my answer. Another thing that some students talk about or some teachers teach, and it's called SOAP, S-O-A-P. It's an acronym. What it means is this first one stays the same in terms of signs. Your next one is the opposite of what's here. And your last one here is always positive. So when you're doing cube factoring, if you always remember SOAP, same sign as your original, opposite sign of your original, and always positive, hopefully you will always get your signs right if you remember your SOAP. Okay, example 3. First thing we always check for is GCF. There's no GCF in example 3, so next we need to write everything as a cube. So we write these as a cube. We have 1,000, which is written as 10 cubed, and 27 is 3 cubed, and we still have x cubed. Okay, my son is here with me today while I'm recording. All right, so after that, we factor. We make our 2 sets of parentheses. Okay, in my first parenthesis, I have 10 plus 3x. We wrote it the same way, we just took away the cubes. Next, first one is the first one squared, which is 100. The last one is the last one squared, which is, remember to square both of them, 9x squared. Always positive. Then our middle is these multiplied together. 10 times 3x is 30x, and it's going to be minus because that is the opposite. So, again, SOAP. Same sign, opposite, always positive. And this is my answer. Example 4. What do I always do first? GCF is correct. In this case, the GCF is 12. Hopefully you noticed that. So then we factor out 12, which means I'm dividing each of these by 12, and I'm left with 1 minus x cubed. Aiden, be quiet and go sit down. Okay, so from here, now we need to write everything as a cube. I will later. Go sit down. Okay, so 1 can be written as a cube as 1 cubed minus x cubed. So when I write my factors, the first thing I need to do is keep that GCF 12. We make our 2 parentheses. In my first parenthesis, Everything stays the same as it was with the cubes. So that is 1 minus x. First term is the first term squared. 1 squared is 1. My last term is my last term squared, and x squared is x squared. And again, it's always positive. My middle term is these multiplied together. 1 times x is 1x, or x. And since this is minus, this is plus. And if we use SOAP, same, opposite, always positive. And there's my answer. Okay, example 5. I would like you to try this one on your own. So if if you press enter, it will pause this, and then when you're ready to try it again, press enter again. Okay, so hopefully enter is pressed, and everyone try this on their own first. Always check for what first? GCF. So we take a 3 out, we divided each of these. Wait, I just noticed. What else should be taken out? Y. You should have taken out a 3y. Both of these can be divided by 3y. When I do that, this all cancels out, and I'm left with 1 plus 3 goes into 81 27 times, and y cancels with one of these y's to leave us with y cubed. So I have 1 plus 27y cubed. So once we've done that, we need to check if we have cubes for everything. 1 can be written as a cube as 1 cubed, and then we have 27 is 3 cubed, and then we have y cubed. So when we go to make our parentheses, I have a 3y that has been factored out in front, and then I make my 2 parentheses. My first parenthesis stays the same, so that will be 1 plus 3y. My next parenthesis, we square the 1, and 1 squared is 1. Last one is this last one squared. Again, make sure you always square both terms. 3 squared is 9, and y squared is y squared. Always positive there. Multiply those together. 1 times 3y is 3y, and that is a minus because it's the opposite. Same, opposite, always positive. All right, moving on to example 6. If you remember in previous notes, when we wanted to write x to the 4th as a square, we wrote x squared to the 2nd power. So now I have x to the 6th that I want to write as a cube. So what that means is I want to write x to some power cubed, because I need to write things as cubes. Well, powers to powers you multiply. So what number should be here? 2 is correct, because 2 times 3 is 6. Okay? Minus 8. How do I write 8 as a cube? Hopefully you said 2 cubed, and that is correct. We make our 2 parentheses. We have our smaller one and our larger one. The first one, again, now remember, this time we are taking away the cubes. So that means I have x squared minus 2 in my first parenthesis. Then here, we square x squared. Well, x squared squared, x squared to the 2nd power. 2 times 2 is 4. So this is x to the 4th power. My last term is the last term squared, and 2 to the 2nd power is 4, and it's always positive. When you multiply those together, 2 times x squared is 2x squared, and if this is a minus, this is a plus. And again, you can check with SOAP. Same, opposite, always positive. Last one, number 7. It says the volume of a rectangular prism is this, 2x plus 16x to the 4th cubic inches. What does volume mean? How do you find volume? Okay, so hopefully some of you are responding. Volume you find by length times width times height. Okay, so now if you go down to part A, it says if the height of the prism is 2x inches, find the area. Well, area is what? length times width. So what they're saying is basically they want to find out what are these two values. They're telling you that this is your height and they want to know what are the length and the width. So what you're doing on this problem is factoring. Exactly what we already have been doing this whole unit or this whole lesson. So you know how you have 2x plus 16x to the fourth is the total volume. They are telling you that the height is 2x. So that means you're factoring out 2x, which means we are dividing each of these by 2x. When you do that, the 2x's cancel out and you're left with 1. Here, 2 goes into 16 8 times, and x goes in here, leaving x to the third. So in this parenthesis, I have 1 plus 8x cubed. Now they are wanting you to factor this. They want this in two separate pieces to give a length and a width. So in order to factor this, I need to see if they can both be written as cubes. Can 1 be written as a cube? Yes, it's 1 cubed because 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 8, can 8 be written as a cube? Yes, 8 is 2 cubed and then x cubed. So when we go to factor this, we still have our 2x. We make our 2 parentheses. The first one, we just take away all those cubes. And so you're left with 1 plus 2x when you take away the cubes. Your first term is the first term squared. 1 squared is 1. Your last term is the last term squared. You have to square the 2 and the x. So you get 4x squared, and that is always positive. Your middle term, we multiply these together. 1 times 2x is 2x. And then since this is plus, this will be minus. It wants to know what are the possible lengths of the length and width. Well, the possible lengths are 1 plus 2x and 1 minus 2x plus 4x squared. These are my answers. The area, when it said here, if the volume or the height of the prism is 2x inches, find the area. So this is my answer right here is for B. My answer for A was when I took out just the 2x. So when I took out the 2x, the area, the volume, just the length and the width, is 1 plus 8x cubed. That is my answer for A. Hopefully, this explains things well enough, and I will answer questions tomorrow.